Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
And we're back and talking shit again. Welcome back to Talos Talks Shit. I'm here with my man, Pubby.
Yo,
what's up? I'm really excited for this episode. This episode is like the newest of the new, the freshest of the fresh.
Yeah, this is some pretty fresh.
It's fresh tech, dude. So,
get it while it's hot.
The technical name for this episode is Emergent Tool Use for Multi-Agent Interaction.
Ooh.
And the normal name for this episode is AI Plays Hide and Seek and Learns How to Do Stuff Good. And other stuff too. And basically what happened was OpenAI was done with 5, was done with Dactyl, pretty much done with GPT-2 for the moment. So they decided to create a new challenge for themselves. And they decided to tackle hide and seek.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did was they created agents, similar to the agents that play Dota. And these agents were put in controlled environments, and they were tasked with finding and hiding from one another. But now this gets really interesting. So, first of all, within these environments, there were objects. They could do things like... So basically how the game started is that in the first environment, which was a simple controlled environment, they had 2 hiders, 2 seekers. Seekers got to find the hiders got to hide. There were 2 walls with the environment, with 2 doors.
Mm-hmm.
Before the game starts, seekers are locked in place. Hiders are able to generate and move objects as they please. Once the game starts, they just have to evade the seekers. So... sorry, struggling to think of how exactly
to explain this.
To bring this to the next point. So, all AI has incentives.
Yeah.
All algorithms have to have incentives coded in by their authors.
Well, maybe.
Well, they have to have some sort of reward structure to know that they're right. Some sort of +1, -1 system. So, you can call that a reward system generally, right?
And actually, you could be like the incentive is minimizing your loss.
Right. Yeah.
They're always trying to minimize or maximize something.
Oh, yeah, exactly. There's always a positive result for something done correctly and a negative result for something done incorrectly. So now they did 2 strategies here, and this is where it gets really fascinating. The first strategy they used was object location information. So both hiders and seekers were tasked with their incentive was their interaction with the objects in the world around them.
Yeah.
Which seems to make a lot of sense, you know? And the way they weighted this was that they favored strategies that used object positions that were unknown or untested. You know what I mean? So basically try to find the most unique object position to achieve the goal of hiding from the seeker.
Dude, maybe before we can explain how the environment looked up so that people kind of...
Right, okay, that's actually a very good point. So this all started in a simple environment. I extrapolated it to a randomized environment later, but it was like a room. It was like a classroom. If you imagine a flat floor, there were 2 walls and 2 doors and a bit of an outside area.
Okay.
But it was restrained within that environment.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, they could randomly generate objects with the environment, both hiders and seekers.
Could I make an example? So it's like playing hide and seek in an empty house, and you could choose to hide in a room and put a door in a room if you want. But none of the rooms in the houses
are closed
are closed.
They don't have ceilings. They don't have roofs.
Yeah,
that's very
important. So you could see inside almost like an episode of Sims, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like Sims, except none of the doors were closed.
Exactly.
And the AIs had to figure out if they wanted to close doors, if they wanted to jump over walls,
hide behind walls, all of those things. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. So to start with, they were tasked with interacting with the objects, you know. What can I do with this object? Where can I put it?
And what were the objects there?
So there were 2 objects. There were boxes and ramps.
Okay.
Yeah, let me stop myself there. There were boxes and ramps, and the boxes can be used to block doors, and ramps can be used for other things. And so, in doing this, the AI achieved a fairly competent level of playing the game, although strategies were highly random and very non-human. They seemed very non-intuitive and odd. So what they then did was they changed the incentive structure, and instead of incentivizing the agents to interact with the objects, the only incentive was to win. So
they got a +1 or -1 at the end of the game.
So basically, if hiders managed to remain hidden until the end of the game, they would get a +1, and if they were found, they would get a -1. If seekers managed to find hiders, they would get a +1, and if they didn't, they would get a -1. That was it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing they coded this AI to weight itself with.
As opposed to before where they had these intrinsic rewards.
Well, they had object-based intrinsic rewards, because now the intrinsic reward is winning.
Yeah.
Everything up to winning is up to the AI, whereas the other one, the intrinsic reward, was being creative with objects.
Okay.
And being creative with objects and winning was up to the AI. So, kind of flipping it around.
Okay.
And something pretty amazing happened. So, before I get to the magic in the ointment here, what these agents did in this simple environment was they developed 6 distinct strategies. So the first strategy was random. So the hiders and the seekers just moved around and generated objects and put them in places randomly. Following that, the seekers began to learn to chase the hiders. And remember, the seekers, when they were moving around randomly, they didn't know they had to chase the hiders.
Yeah.
They just learned from constantly getting this -1 reward that
If I chase this red dude,
gives me a +1.
Yeah.
So chasing was number 2. Then number 3 was blocking. So pretty much as soon as the hiders learned to chase, the seekers learned to chase the hiders learned to block the seekers' paths.
like hide inside a room and then like block the door.
Well, no, I actually realized in saying that I left something quite important out. These agents have a field of view, which is totally different to the OpenAI 5 agents, which saw the world as numbers. They actually have a conical field of view in front of them. By conical, I just mean like a triangle, you know?
Okay.
And if there is an object within that field of view, their field of view is blocked. So if a seeker is standing in front of a box, looking at it, looking for a hider, and the hider is behind the box, even though it's in direct line of sight, that line of sight is obscured by the box. So when they say blocking, they learned to put those blocks in front of doors.
Oh, just like literally put like something between me and you.
Well, basically like a combination of that and closing the door. So they like closed the door with the boxes, but they did that because they realized that would obscure the hider's field of view.
Yeah.
And again, remember, no reward for field of view, no reward for anything other than remaining hidden.
Yeah.
So once the hiders started blocking their room, remember this room doesn't have a roof or a ceiling, the seekers figured out how to use ramps. So they created ramps and they would start running up the wall and over into the ceiling, finding the hiders. And pretty much as soon as that happened, the hiders began to learn ramp defense. So in their little time before the game started, they would take all the ramps from the seekers and lock them inside the room and then lock off the room, and the seekers wouldn't be able to find them. So none of this was predicted by the authors. None of it. And what happened even further was that they took the environment and they randomized it. And in the randomized environment, or the full environment, there were multiple rooms, multiple walls and structures and doors and things. More objects. They had like round objects and all sorts of things. And there were a few more strategies that emerged. So again, training the algorithm from basic, it started with random, then it started chasing. Then the hiders learned how to construct shelters. They learned how to not have to run to the room and block the doors. They learned how to rather take blocks and build a shelter around themselves that protected them from the Seekers. Again, with no intrinsic reward system based on building or sheltering or whatever.
Yeah.
So then the Seekers again figured out how to use ramps to get into these shelters, and the hiders again then figured out how to take these ramps and hide them within the shelters. But then something totally unexpected happened. The Seekers figured out that the way the environment was designed had a flaw in it. So what they did was they learned how to lock the ramps in place and then take boxes and ramp off the ramps and fly around on the top of the environment so that they could then penetrate the Seekers' shelter and find them. Dude.
That's crazy.
And then the fucking hiders figured out that the Seekers had figured out how to surf and game the environment. So they gamed the environment even further and started locking all their ramps in places that wouldn't allow them to access the shelters. So there are actually 7 or 8 unique behaviors that this AI has developed totally by itself.
Yeah.
Without any reward system for those strategies. And it actually sort of is a new thing that this AI has done, which is called developing an autocurricula.
Yeah.
So an autocurricula is very cool. Very, very cool. Because what it is simply defined, it's each strategy creates new pressures for an agent to progress.
Yeah.
So to break that down, when there is more than one agent within an environment, there's intrinsic dynamics that arise between those two agents. They've got to work together or they've got to not work together. One's going to sacrifice the other, all these different dynamics that arise from competition and cooperation. This creates a naturally emerging social structure or curricula between these two agents, in that one agent will behave based on how the other agent is behaving and vice versa. There's some sort of structural communication between these two. So curricula you can think of like a day. So, your 9-to-5 job, your curricula, you wake up at 8 o'clock, you go into the office, you can expect to see everyone else in the office at 9 o'clock, you can expect to see everyone off at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
You're not telling anyone, hey, I'll see you there tomorrow. It's just a curricula that has been created because of the way you interact with one another. And because this curricula is created, it compounds itself. So each new social task creates a new environment for innovation, because each time something changes, the other agent has to adapt. So
if you define intelligence, right, as the ability to, and it's actually the whole curricula and autocurricular thing comes from a research paper, sort of like manifesto that DeepMind published in March this year. And what they basically said is that, and it's a big problem that's happening with a whole bunch of fields in machine learning and neural networks. And here's the idea is, if you define intelligence as the ability to achieve things in different scenarios, in different environments, right? Your bottleneck becomes the environment. And what I mean by that is that if your AI completely solves the environment that you have for it, the only way it can get better is by providing a new environment. Right. So whereas before machine learning researchers were developing neural net architectures, what they need now to improve the intelligence of the agent is to make better environments, right?
That's fair. Okay, so is that the initial
and that was the bottleneck,
thinking behind an autocurriculum?
Yeah, and the idea was that instead of, and the idea is that, and in terms of societies, right, what happens is that, we're talking about game theory. So if you have two agents, the two agents reach some sort of equilibrium, right? But if an innovation happens, right, so for example, you can think about human society, fire, right, the internet, then there's an imbalance in the stable equilibrium. and one party now has some gainable exploitation of the system, and the other party has to figure out how to mitigate that exploitation. So the exploitation might have been like the ramps and like locking them into place. And what people did before was that they used the intrinsic rewards, which is, as you said in the beginning, they were like, yeah, let's just use these intrinsic rewards. Like maybe if we encourage them to pick up things. But what they realized is that instead of making whole new environments, right, all you need to do is to like have your agents compete with each other, because once you introduce an innovation, you've essentially made a new environment.
Right.
So
okay.
instead of having to now always reinvent environments.
Right. So basically, a new strategy is as good as a new environment.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and that also brings us quite nicely to the fact that what's happening now is becoming more difficult to measure.
Yeah.
So a major thing with this hide and seek thing was, how do they actually measure agent progress after a certain point? Because I mean, obviously, random, you can see when it goes from random to chasing and whatever, but once each of them are pretty competent, and hiders are winning at a good rate and seekers are winning at a good rate, how do you measure progress beyond that? And that's a lot more relevant to measuring progress and safety of AI within the real world.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, like a logical next step for this in terms of AI safety could be to disable in some way the team member. So let's say there's 2 hiders and 2 seekers, right?
Yeah.
One hider is perfectly capable, but one hider moves slower.
Okay.
Or one hider doesn't have arms, so they can't move.
Sure.
So you introduce an inherent need for either compassion or lack thereof. Because, either the fully capable agent is going to create strategies that help the less capable agent, or it is going to create strategies that exploit the less capable agent and allow it to keep its safety. And if you set the intrinsic value as only winning, it's unknown what the outcome will be. So this way of measuring improvement within cooperative AI systems is incredibly complicated, and they actually suggested
they had to come up with like their own framework, but specifically this is how it was new frameworks for this specific task.
Exactly. And essentially what they're promoting is that each specific task is going to need new and novel frameworks for measuring that progress.
Yeah.
And I don't know, do you have anything you want to say on this?
I still think like what I find fascinating about all of this is there's still no communication protocol.
Right. So like autocurricular is essentially like a false communication protocol, because there is no communication, but there's pressure.
There's pressures from people. Yeah,
there's pressure within the network.
Yeah.
To act within a certain way.
And if you think about like human evolution, right? So there are certain points in our history where certain innovations have had an outsized effect. Like this one thing changed, and it changed like the trajectory of it forever.
Yeah.
So for example, maybe figuring out fire was one of them. Right?
Yeah.
Certainly, like language was one of them as well. Right?
Major one, yeah.
Yeah, our ability to communicate with each other meant that we can like cooperate to build things. Now, everything that this AI has done has no communication protocol, in the sense that they have to model their behavior, but they also have to model another person's behavior with no feedback from that person.
Right.
And this is what these are like the strategies they're able to achieve in with let's say the null or like the null communication protocol, where like there's no cooperation, there's no explicit communication.
Right. Yeah.
And I think like it's going to be a really interesting research step to see what happens when agents are able to like send messages to each other, interpret that information, and then act on it.
So to take that one step deeper, there's a theory that gossip was more important to the evolution of humanity than factual information.
Really?
Yeah. So, because gossip allows people to create societal models of perception for someone.
Yeah.
So, this guy's a mean man in the sack, you know?
Yeah.
4,000 years ago here.
Yeah.
He goes off to hunt, all the women stay home, and wow.
Yeah.
It's probably the most sexist example I could have come up with. But anyway, the idea is that
said mean man in the sack, I was thinking like a dude, like an angry person in the sack.
No,
it took me a second to be like, oh.
I mean, a fine lover.
Okay.
You know,
a Casanova.
A Casanova. That allowed societies to create archetypes and images for people and to create preference.
Yeah.
So what's happened in multi-agent cooperation, which is brand new, is that, as I said, no agents have had flaws. All agents have been perfect, you know? So...
Oh, you mean they're all genetically...
They're all,
copies of each other?
ideal.
I see.
They're all ideal for their interaction with their environment. None of them have inherent flaws
I see.
for the interaction with their environment and for the final outcome. Whereas humans in the world have flaws everywhere. There's never a situation where you're not exposed to someone's personality flaw,
I see.
someone's, ability to hunt flaw, ability to knit or whatever. So I feel like the next step is that either inter-agent communication is going to arise from having flaws.
But so you have to code that in, right? So imagine you're the coder doing this, right? Like what's crucial about the AIs we have now is that it's reinforcement learning, which means they have actions that they can do, right? But the actions, we choose the actions, right? We told them, you have the lock, grab action.
Yeah.
You have the run action. They don't have the option for the communicate action because it's not on the API that we've given into their code.
But now this is the thing.
So
using ramp surfing was not an API that we gave to the code. That was an unknown.
But so the strategy was, but like, for example...
But no. The ramp surfer was a fundamental game of the system.
Yeah.
So they figured out what their predefined rules were and they gamed them from there. So what I'm saying is a hidden layer may emerge within a neural network that is a way that the neural network has figured out how to game its pre-coded rules and create inter-agent communication on a level that we don't understand.
That's interesting.
And I feel like perhaps the way to do that is to introduce flaws into systems, inherent flaws into agents within systems like this, so that the AI constantly has to check on the other agent to see what's happening, you know?
I mean, if they did have to interact, it would have to be through the environment, right?
No, not necessarily. Because if you could give the two agents, let's say we're dealing with two hiders, right?
Yeah.
And the one hider doesn't have any arms and therefore can't lock or move any objects.
Okay.
But the objective is for both of them to be successful.
Okay.
So now the hider with full capabilities has to be constantly checking on the state of the hider with less than full capabilities, because if he does something and the other guy is just sitting out there, he's going to lose.
He's going to lose, yeah.
So there would have to be some sort of agent-state communication.
Yeah, but the question is how, right?
No, but this is what I'm saying. Say in a similar way that hidden layers emerge in terms of aggressive strategies and so on.
The hidden layer would be in your brain, right? So you could imagine there's something in our brains happening where we figured out, I can communicate. But even if your hidden layer in your brain changes, right, you have to talk. Right. There has to be some explicit...
Some sort of output mechanism.
Now, it might be that we can't talk to each other, but I can move sticks in the sand to make Morse code or something. But then I'm changing the environment and I'm using the environment as a communication protocol, right? So that's how language might occur in these agents. But you still need some explicit form of
communication.
Of protocol, yeah.
Maybe they should put a whiteboard in the environment.
I mean, I
basic
could imagine them
symbols.
just sending random strings to each other.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Like some sort of random agent communication that is super simple but develops
Yeah.
independently.
That's an interesting question.
And
And
that's-
it's interesting to see if that would actually change anything.
This is what I'm wondering. I mean, I'm just speculating here,
Yeah.
but I think that's a cool place to leave off.
Yeah.
And please join us for our next episode because we're going to have a little bit of a discussion. Way less technical, way less involved, way more societally relevant and philosophical. And I think it's going to be quite cool.
Yeah.
So I really look forward to it.
Paper clips.
Paper clips, man. Paper clips. So thank you, Pubby. Thank you,
Cheers.
Blended Podcasts. We out here as always on Facebook and Instagram. I haven't given a shout out to my main man, Mafiana, for a while. Mafiana, aka Selective Hearing, is the mean man with all the beats. And please check his parties out. You can always check the Selective Hearing parties on Facebook and Instagram as well. They're really dope. You might see us there. Come talk to us about some shit.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.